What do you know about reconciliation? Where did you get that knowledge from? You probably didn't wake up one day just knowing it. It came from the people around you, from the media, from school, from government-driven programs like museums. In fact, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's call to action 62 to 65 are all about that. Education for reconciliation. All these things that I've just listed, though, have from one way or another come from or through Indigenous people, but they need a stage to be set so that people can hear them. That stage, often given by the government, gives the government power over the future. Governments may not have the power to change the past, but they can choose how we learn from it. They can choose what we see in our public spaces, like schools, museums, monuments, and curriculums, or maybe more importantly, what we don't see. I'm making this video with a purpose to send out a call to action, a clear, manageable step forward for reconciliation. In June of 2015, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released 94 calls to action, many directed at governments and education systems. Since the Canadian government is the entity being called upon in the calls to action, that leads to the question, what roles do governments and museums as a subset of governments play in acknowledging and addressing historical injustices? Well, here's what I think. Governments may not have the power to change the past, but they have a responsibility to share the past openly and honestly through resources such as museums, and call their people to move forward together to a better future. Their role lies in encouraging people to accept the past and change for the better. Museums aren't the only stream through which the government shares stories. They have schools around the whole province educating the youth. As a better way to encourage people to learn from the past, the BC government implemented a BCFP course as a graduation requirement in the 2023-24 school year. This course, as any, had to be taught by teachers. But when it comes to a course rooted in Indigenous history and reconciliation, wouldn't it make sense for somebody with deep, lived experience to teach it? Because when you learn about a group of people without ever spending time with them, you start to see less of humans and more of ideas. We struggle to feel compassion for ideas. Compassion grows from contact. Having Indigenous voices in the room is a simple, powerful way to connect youth with First Nations people, especially for students who don't have an Indigenous role model in their life. This prevents harmful stereotypes from becoming the only frame of reference that somebody has, and that matters. It also directly supports Call to Action 63, Section 3, building student capacity for intercultural understanding, empathy, and mutual respect. To summarize, by getting Indigenous people in, sharing their knowledge, experience, and voice, we can get a deeper understanding of what reconciliation means to us and how we can influence it. So now you know more about schools' power in educating youth and supporting reconciliation, but not everyone's still in school. So where do the rest of us learn Indigenous history and reconciliation? We learn it from our surroundings still, from the stories we see in public spaces, and that brings me to museums. Museums are more than rooms with stuff in them. They're classrooms we visit with our eyes open. But governments still have control about what we see when we enter. They decide what stories get told and which ones get left out. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission addressed this too. Calls to Action 67 to 70 focused specifically on museums and archives. They called on the government to fund Indigenous-led content, review museum policies, and ensure that exhibits reflect the full truth. They should reflect where we are and where we've been, from everyone's perspective. Because when I walked through the Old Town exhibit at the Royal BC Museum, I noticed something was missing: Indigenous voices. This city within a museum, frozen in time, might reflect what BC looked like a long time ago. But just like the real towns of the past, it left out the people who were displaced, the people whose lands we still live on now. That does not excuse excluding their voices and stories today in the exhibit. Just some text or any action to at least get museum goers thinking about what voices were left out, kicked off their land, would be the bare minimum. And yet, just across the road, the Legislative Building's public hall showed us how it can be done. There, I saw a stunning canoe, carved by the Right Honourable Stephen L. Point. His quote stood beside it: We're in the same canoe. It's called the Earth, the world. We're traveling through space. We have to try and work together, paddle in the same direction. Maybe we can accomplish something. That really stuck with me. It reminded me that reconciliation isn't something individual people do alone. It's something a society does together. It's time to start paddling in the same direction. To do that, I have proposed 2 calls to action, one for the government and one for you, the viewer. Firstly, to the government. BCFP 12 should be taught by or with Indigenous people. I've shown why throughout the video, because reconciliation isn't theoretical, it's relational. It's about who's in the room, whose voices are heard, and who gets to tell their own story. And to you, who's watching. Reconciliation doesn't just happen in government offices or museum walls. It happens in moments, conversations, and choices. So here's a simple action you can take. Create your own My Reconciliation Includes statement. These are meaningful, doable actions that reflect your values and your learning. Maybe your reconciliation includes calling out harmful language, or educating yourself beyond what your school teaches, or acknowledging the land that you live on, not just in words, but in awareness. The key to these? Intention and personalization. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be yours. Because reconciliation isn't a checklist, it's a path that we walk together. Thank you for watching.